Okay. All right. So I believe you're connected to my screen right now. I believe you can see my screen. From the last session, we actually covered a lot of like tags, HTML tags, and we worked with CSS, of course. We designed a couple of components. I would say a lot of basic stuff. Though I also believe that there are some of you having issues with some of those things that we designed, some of those things that we created. So if you are having any issues from the last session, so far, we actually try to drop your comments, try to ask your question right now before we get deep into what we are meant to cover today. You can start dropping your questions if you are having issues with creating buttons. We are also going to do a lot today. If you are not able to cover up with everything on the call and during the session, you can always check out YouTube. You can always play this film, and if you have further questions, you can come back to the chat here and drop your questions, and definitely someone will attend to you. Okay, so today we're going to be building a lot of components. We're going to be designing a lot of components. I'm going to be teaching you on a couple of things about positions and layouts. Of course, we are going to be using the resource, the link we shared with you, which is Mozilla Development Network. I think I'll just say Mozilla Dev Network. And let's talk about positions. Let's see. Oh, no. Mozilla, not Mozilla CSS Positions. Okay. Alright, so we're going to be covering some things from here. Let me just confirm that you're seeing my screen. Okay, and I hope it's not too small. I hope so. Alright, so we're going to be covering positions today, and basically these are some of the major positions, CSS positions you'll be working with. There are more, but at least for the meantime, we're going to be using static, relative, absolute, sticky. We also have a fixed. So I would go ahead and drop the link on the chat, so you can also open it from your system, from your PC, and follow along with me. Alright, so the aim of CSS position is to actually set the positions of elements, just like the name position, of course, is to set the position of elements on your page or on your document. And of course you can see you have to use some of the other properties alongside top, left, right, and bottom. Alright, so we're going to start with creating some of these components that you can see here. So let's go ahead and do that.
What did I want to do for you? I'm tired of all of you.
I strongly believe you understand everything I have here. This is just the basic HTML structure, so let's go ahead and create a simple section. I also have to bring in, remember you have to bring in this document you have here. So let's see, let's move these items into the appropriate folder location. So let's say open folder. We have this CSS file. I'm going to move it in here. I'm going to create a new folder. Okay, can I just duplicate this and call it CSS? Alright, so I think that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to alright, so let's verify that this is working by setting on the background. If we can do that, don't save. So, okay. Or let's just attribute this to the entire body. Alright, so I'm going to have to refresh this page. Okay, so we see something is not right here. Oh, right, okay. Oh, yeah, thank you, Victor. Okay, so that was a problem, and now this is connected. Okay, so we're going to take this off. At least we don't need, of course, we don't need yellow, so let's just leave it as basic white. We'll just take it off totally. And we're going to create this classes, this class rectangle. Let's do a width of maybe 200 px, right? Rectangle. Okay, so we have 3 rectangles. Let's go ahead and look at what we have here. We have 3 rectangles, so I'm going to call it rectangle 1, 2, and 3. Basically, these two have the same property, so it's always advised not to repeat classes, but in our own case we're going to use a different color, so we can use these colors to test out the difference in like the options we have here from relative, absolute, and the others. So let's go ahead and just do let's call this we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I'm going to call this let's start with relative. Also, let's have absolute. Sounds sticky. And also we have fixed. Okay. Alright, so we have these divs. I'm going to set border solid black. So in case you have any questions so far with these are just simple properties, working with width, height, the border. So in case you have any issues with these things, you can always ask your questions. So we have these items, this set of items, and of course let's just go in here and put relative. So let's do this. Absolutes. Okay. And also fixed. Okay, so I think we can refresh. Alright, so we have these various boxes, as you can see, relative, absolute, sticky, and fixed. Now we are going to apply positions on them, and I'll be able to explain how they are actually functioning. I believe, can you guys hear me? Someone is saying the audio is gone. Can you hear me? Okay, so Eddie, please work on your Discord app, or work on the audio from your end. Okay, so we have these various items now. I'm going to just give you basic explanations, and I would advise that you read up from here. I'm going to explain these things from a practical standpoint, and the first thing I will try to make you understand, that is why I have a design file here. I'm going to make you understand how these items work, not just by giving you a bunch of grammar that you might not understand long term. So let's assume we have one of those boxes, just like this. Now basically the way relative work, I'm going to take this off and let's use this as our page. So I'm going to assume this is our web page. Now the way relative work is, if you have a particular container, this is a container, right? So let's assume we're working on the web page right now, just an assumption. So if this is our container and we set this item to relative, you will be able to use those properties, properties such as top, left, right, and bottom, to move this particular item across this page. Be it maybe you're going to the top, so you're moving like relative from one particular angle. So either you're moving to the top, or I'm going to show you an example right now. And the main question I think everybody should be asking is, okay, why do we really need positions? So by default, you can't just apply top, left, right. You can't just apply these items or these properties to your elements and expect them to work, because everything is meant to be layered. So when I say layered, this is what I mean. So everything is meant to be layered. So if you have another position, what you should be expecting is this item moving down to the bottom, just like this. So this is what I mean by layered. Everything in your DOM is basically called the DOM, or what you see on the browser. Everything is meant to be layered or stacked, like this, more like just stacked together like this. So but having relative position set on your element, you will be able to move this item. Having a relative plus an absolute item selected, you will be able to also apply a different kind of movements. And the way it works is to use the item absolute, you need to make sure you are actually in a relative container. Now I'm going to explain that from a practical angle. So let's go ahead and work with this relative item first. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to apply something here. I think it's better if I reduce this size. So I think I don't want to zoom down on that browser. I don't want to start zooming in or out. So let's just okay. Alright, so I'm going to put let's use left, and let's just say maybe 50%. That might be too much, but okay. So I'm going to use the left, and I'm going to use 50%.
Please, everyone, stay on the line, please. I'm seeing your messages. It's probably network, so I'm just going to set up quickly. Please just stay on the line. Thank you.
Hello, sorry, can everyone hear me now? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we can hear you. You went off before. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, can you see my screen now? Sorry, I had to switch my network. I think the network was already giving issues. I had to switch to a different provider. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you see my screen? Sorry, so sorry about that. So sorry about that. Can you see my screen now? Okay, yeah. Apologies, sincerely apologize for that. Okay, so let me continue. Let me continue. The server is bad. Is it better now, Chooks? Okay, so I believe if some people can see it, let's just proceed. Okay, so I was trying to show you, like creating. I was actually explaining, not knowing that I've gone up the server already. So immediately I came back, I had to just use Ctrl Z to take off some of these items. So I'm going to bring them back in. So I was trying to explain, the reason why we make some items relative, and from the image I have here, I said by default your items are actually layered on your screen this way. So the moment you're using positions, it means you're about to start moving these items, like applying relative. You can actually move this item like top. You can actually move this item like to the right. You can move it to the left. You can also take it take it to the top and also bottom. And I said for absolute, I'm actually talking about relative and absolute first, so you understand this better. For absolute also works the same way, but the best way to use absolute is you have to use absolute when you are basically inside a relative container. Now, that is not like the compulsory way, and I said earlier that I'm going to explain this from a practical standpoint. Building applications, building websites for a while now, I can tell you that is the use case you find yourself using it when you have like a relative container, and then maybe you want to position something. So I have an example that we're going to build together. Here's an example. So maybe you are trying to implement this item. So let's assume this is an image you got, and you're trying to implement this inside this page. But at the same time, using the layer pattern, you can just stack all this stuff together and use things like margin bottom. But I'll show you the reason why that's a bad approach and why you should probably go for absolute. So let's go ahead and just talk about the basics first. All right. So these are my containers, and I'm going to add the position. So this is position, and I'm going to call this relative. So I'm going to add it to the rest of them as well. This is absolute. This is sticky, and this is fixed. Okay. All right. So the next thing I'm going to put right now is in order to make you see this in action, I'm going to put the positions. So, but for us to verify that this is actually on our page, as you can see, immediately I refresh this page, one of these items went off. Basically, that's the sticky and absolute, being on the same position, and that is because this particular sticky item, the way it works basically is it's able to stay on this page till you get to a specific point, like you're trying to leave the page, and then it becomes stagnant on that particular position. Though you can actually use like top and bottom to place it on a different location on your screen, but that's the way it basically works. So let's start with relative, and what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to turn off one of these items. I think that should be, let's take this off. All right, which should I take off first? Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to turn off absolute first. So I'm going to put top here, and let's just say 40 px, and also left 40 px. And let's just go ahead and refresh. Okay, so this is what I get. So I'm going to turn off absolute first. So I'm going to put the positions. So this is position, and I'm going to put the positions. So this is position, and this is relative. And now the question is, I said top. Why is this guy going downwards? What's the point when you say top? Why is this guy going downward? Okay, so basically what we're having here is when you say top, you're actually describing the space that you want at the top of this element. So the moment you give this item a position of relative or even absolute, and you say top is describing the space you get at the top here. Bottom is describing the space you get, like outside the element, not inside the element. Then left and right is going to, so right now I said left, and as you can see this item is moving down to the left. So the moment I say right, so you can see this is what you get. So now this item is moving down to the right and creating space on the other end. So let's go ahead and make this more I can say maybe left of 0. So this is back to normal. I can say right of 0. Maybe I can say right of like 400 px. Alright, so basically that is off the screen. You can't see that again. So but the moment I use left 400, so you can see what we are just doing here is we're using top, left, right, bottom. You can use this item to move this particular container around the screen. So sometimes you are definitely going to use this. So I would show you like a use case of when you would use relative positions. Before we move on to absolute, I'll show you like a specific use case. If you see a lot of modern sites, so I'll show you an example at the moment. Let's see if I can get an example here. Alright, so I think this is a good example. Okay, so I'm not going to open this site. You can actually come down to godly.website to see a lot of modern and beautiful website designs. This is one of my favorite websites to get design inspiration. But if you come down to this site, as you can see, I just clicked on this particular template, I think, called Cosmos. So you can also visit the site to see this exact layout. You can see the way these items are stacked on this page. There is no specific saying this is the pattern, this is the exact pattern we are trying to follow. So items have been positioned on this page using this relative approach. Now of course there's a kind of interaction using JavaScript. This is plain, and the interaction you're seeing here is actually from my mouse movement or from my cursor. So but looking at this page, scroll from top to bottom, you are seeing different items positioned on different angles, and basically you can achieve this using the relative position on your page. There are other patterns to there are other ways to also achieve the same thing, maybe like using tables, but that is way too complex. That's the way we usually build something like this. I would say like 5 years ago, or maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. But right now, using positions would be the best approach to come up with a very beautiful design like this. Of course, we are going to, you can explore, you can try this, but that's not something I think we should spend our time trying to design right now. But it's as simple as just creating your classes, adding your images. And I remember during the last class I explained how to add images. So you can just add your image and use the relative position to place your items properly on your page. Also remember that when you're designing your website, after coming up with a page like this, remember it has to be mobile friendly as well, which means you might have to also make your components or the elements on that particular page mobile friendly, using the same relative positions as well, or maybe you decide to adopt some other pattern. So basically this is what you get from position your items relative on the page. So this is an example, and from the website, all I had to do was just click on the item. So we have examples, right? So basically what we're doing as well, I can change this to 80, change this to 50 or 40 or 30, and as you can see, as I'm changing this value, it's moving automatically. So if you're on this page, you can also test this. So I think this is great. Okay, so the next item, of course, is this item that you see here called static. The moment you position something as static, the thing is it's actually going to remain there. It's not going to move anywhere. So let's quickly try something. So let's assume we position a particular element as static. Now, does the top and the left, can you work with top and left? Of course. As you can see, it's not working. All right, so I'm just trying to prototype to test this on the browser so you can see it in action. We have an element static, and this is not working. Let's go ahead and test this offline to also verify. Let's test this on our browser. So static is the default position of all your elements. So let's go ahead and create static. By default, though, your elements are static. So I'm just going to remove some of these items we have there, paste it here, and change this to static. Then I'm going to create now a quick tip here. I mean, it's just an advice. If you're having difficulty understanding what we're doing, always drop your questions, and don't say at the end of the class they are so advanced and don't understand what they're doing. Make sure you drop a question, okay? Alright, so we're making this static or refreshing this page. Yeah, so as you can see, we have static, and we also have like the top and the left, which means if the top and the left works, we're expecting this particular item to also be on this position. Unfortunately, the moment you make something static, you cannot move them or move that particular item using these options of top, left, right, and the rest of them. Bottom, animation, top, left, right, and bottom. Yeah, so that will not work because it's static. So as I said earlier, if you go ahead and create like your paragraph tag, by default these items are static until you apply some other position on it. So if you create like this is a paragraph, it is static. Yeah, so by default this item is static, and the nature of this item is the moment you keep adding others, everything is going to be layered, as I said earlier. So this is another paragraph. So everything is going to be layered just from my explanation here. So everything is going to be layered. So the moment you keep creating more paragraphs, let's assume this is a paragraph, you are going to continue getting this just like that until you decide to apply a different position. So we've understood that the static item is meant to be the same way. The positioning, they're trying to change the location of this item using top and left won't work. For the relative, you can move to the top, you can move to the left using the relative property. And then now let's come to the absolute. As I said earlier, using absolute. So I'm going to refresh this now, and let's take off the paragraphs to avoid having a cluttered page. What else are we taking off here? Let's also take off static, because at least you've understood that static is meant to be, it's actually the default behavior. Alright, so immediately I made this absolute. There's one thing I want you to notice here. What happened here is the absolute item on a page is more like a floating item. It does not really have like a position. So I'm going to really explain that here so you get the point I'm trying to make. So let's give an assumption. We have three items stacked together. This is the first item, this is the second item, and this is the third item. So I think in order to explain this better, I'm just going to apply so let's assume this is and this is the same color with this item. Okay, now we have three items. This is a box, like a div. This is another div, and this is the third div. So we have div 1, div 2, and div 3. Now let's assume we make div 2 absolute. Now the moment you make div 2 absolute, the idea here is div 2 no longer holds a position. Like this particular position it's holding is no longer its position. So it's just floating. It can remain here, but it's just floating here. Now how do you know that this item is just floating on the page? Now it's just floating because this particular item will take over its position, though it will remain here. So a quick example is what you can see. Absolute is still on this location. I'm to zoom in. So absolute is still on this particular location, but it's just floating. That's why you see that sticky can automatically fill in that gap. Do you understand? So sticky can automatically fill in that gap even though absolute is still right behind it. Now, in order to make you understand this, maybe you're not seeing what is on top and what is beneath the other item. So I'm just going to apply like a background color. So let's just say blue, and for sticky I'm going to apply maybe like I don't know, yellow. So I'm going to refresh. Now see what is happening. Sticky is here. You can no longer see absolute. Now absolute is still on that particular position, but it no longer retains that physical space. You understand? So which means I can decide to use the top and the left, to just make. Let me reduce this and let me. So I can just use the top and the left to make absolute, just float out of that particular position a little bit. So as you can see, absolute is floating, but the idea is even at this position where it's floating, it does not really hold that space, because any other component can just take control of that particular boundary, and the absolute is just floating on the page. It does not really have a specific area to say this is where I am residing, and no other component can just automatically take this space. You understand? So the way it works is right now it's just floating on this page, and you can continue to move this around. Maybe I say 80px. So you see what is happening. Let's put the relative back in its normal position, right? So let's put relative back in its normal position, so that we won't. Okay. So as you can see, we can continue to move this item. So as I said earlier, it's just floating on that particular position, and every other item can just override it and maybe cover it up. You understand? So that's the idea. Now, in what scenario would you find yourself using absolute? So I would have loved to give you. Let's look at this website. I strongly believe we can find. We're always using absolute. We'll definitely use the absolute a lot. I would look for an example. Okay, so let's look at the example from our case study here. Alright, so from what we have here, we have a very simple card. As you can see, we have conversation, we have a particular value, like two values bounded together. Then you have this particular item. If you decide to use the layer pattern, you don't want to put any position, you just want everything to sit properly, which is static, and you want let's say everything is static, and you just want this to come under the other items. So that is fine. You would have something like this. But what if this particular text begin to expand? So let's assume this particular text begin to expand. What you get at the end of the day, if this text begin to expand, since you're using the the layer pattern, what you get at the end of the day is that this item begins to drop down like this. It begins to go down. I believe you understand what I mean, because of course, remember you have a margin, right? This item I just showed you has a margin. So let me go back to that particular component. Okay, so this particular item has a margin. So the more items you drop on this text, this guy begins to just go down. But of course, if this particular item right now has absolute positioning, what happens is it will remain on this position like this. So no matter what you type in here, remember I said it does not have a specific location, it's just floating. So no matter what you type inside this text, it would, while you are typing, that item would continue to remain in that position that you've set using your top and your bottom. So we're going to do an example so you will see what I mean. But basically, this is the result you would get from making this item absolute. Do you understand? And just setting your position using left, top, bottom, and right. So let's go ahead and just take this off. If you understand if you don't understand what I mean, please drop a comment there, and I will just explain that again. So coming back to our own diagram, as I said earlier, we made this particular item absolute, and automatically this guy replaced the position, because to this particular object there's nothing filling that space. So now this item can float around left, top, bottom, and right. So Now, what is the use case for using absolute? What is the specific use case? Now, from what I've explained to you, when you have like a particular item, that has that's of course bounded by this outline, or should I say the border, and you want something to sit at a specific location. So of course you have Android devices, you have iPhones, and maybe you look at some applications where you see some items floating. It can be a circular item. So let's assume it's a circular item. It can be a circular item just sitting somewhere on your screen. It can be maybe on your mobile phone, maybe like on WhatsApp, right? On WhatsApp you have I think you have one item showing at the bottom here. I don't know. I think it's basically for chats. I don't know, but I believe there's an item. So on the Android design, on the material design spec, is actually called like a fab. So anytime you hear the term fab is referring to a floating action button, right? So you see it most times on different designs, be it an application or sometimes even on smart TVs, right? So you can actually use absolute to position this item very well inside a container or inside a div. Now let's try out an example. Let me show you how it's implemented. First off, you can, if you are also on this page, you can just take a look at it and try it out to see how it works. So I'm just going to let's go ahead and close this website first.
Okay, I can't see your screen now.
It's a network problem.
So for this one, if you want to create an ad,
okay. All right. So by clicking on position, by clicking on absolute, you can see what just happened here. So by clicking on absolute, you can see it also has this floating behavior. The only difference is when we are on relative. Remember the initial location of a relative. That particular location still belongs to relative, but in the case of absolute, that particular location no longer belongs to absolute. Like it's just filled up. So this is a very simple example to explain what I've been describing. When it's on absolute or when it's on relative, you see that the item left. So this is the relative item right now, right? So the item left this particular position, but no other item could fill in the space. It's floating around, of course, based on your spec. But I mean, the space still remains. It still has that boundary. But when it comes to absolute, it automatically loses that boundary and it's just floating around. So we're going to implement our own use case here. So I'm going to show you like a very simple example based on what I've explained. So we have like this relative container. Once I'm done with the example, then we can proceed with sticky and fixed. But most times you will find yourself using relative and absolute. So now this is a very simple use case. So you have this item with maybe like 200 so for the width and height. So as you can see, absolute is floating right inside this guy. I'm just going to position this item in here, and the reason why I'm putting it here is because I want to show you that absolute is actually inside relative. Okay, so what happens immediately I position it inside relative? Now immediately I position absolute inside the relative container, automatically the new boundary for the absolute item is the relative parent. So now this becomes the parent and the absolute item becomes more like the child of this parent. Now try to understand that the absolute item can still float out of the relative item, but the point here is automatically it has a new boundary, right? When it was outside like this, the boundary was. So I'm not going to leave it in that same position because it might look confusing. But one thing you should understand is I did not change the top and the left. All I just did was place this item outside, and what you can see here is the item outside does not have the same exact location with the other item inside. And why is that? Now the reason for that is because this item we have outside has a new boundary, and the new boundary is what? The body. The new boundary of this item you're seeing here is the body, given that the body is the owner of the entire boundary, or there's no boundary to say, okay, this is my boundary and I have to maintain the rules. I have to implement my rules according to this boundary. Now I am outside. Do you understand? So this particular item is outside, and in order for you to really see what I mean, I'm going to take off the other item inside. You understand? So right now that this item is outside, this item is not inside the relative. Look at our code very well. The code is just on its own, and this item is outside the relative container, and this is the location of 80px top and 80px left. Now the moment I put this item inside the relative, you can see that it automatically has a new position, and the reason for this is because it is using the relative item now as the new boundary, for itself. It's using this item as the new boundary. So which means this is the left, starting from here. Now not from here, but starting from here. So from here to this position is the new distance for the left, and from here to this position is the new distance from the top. Instead of starting from here. So I'm going to show you using this visual representation from the browser. So if you have not opened that before, you just have to click on right click on the browser to the page and just click on inspect. Now the moment you click on inspect, you can click on this item you're seeing here. I'm using Firefox, but you'll definitely see the same thing even on Chrome. Maybe like a different appearance, but of course like similar position, right? So just click on this item, and what you can see is okay. So I think this browser is not really showing what I expect. Maybe okay. So yeah, this browser is not really visualizing it the way I expect. Yeah, it's not really visualizing this the way I expect. But okay, so if you're using if you use some tools, or even on your even in Chrome, definitely once you hover, Chrome will be able to put this type of like a light blue color here to visualize some of these items. For me, sometimes I would use an extension called Visborg. You can just check it out, but I mean you won't be needing it most of the time right now. So Visborg. You can install it on your Chrome, or even if you're using Firefox like me, you can go ahead and install Visborg. It's a good way to actually visualize the position of things on your browser. Yeah, while you're instead of trying to use the inspect. So you can definitely check it out. Let me drop it on the chat for some of you that want to use it. If you have any questions about Visborg, also drop your questions here on the chat, and someone would also attend to you. What I was trying to show you is by the time you click on this item, this might be looking too small, but what is written on that is this is a div and it's absolute. So for a start, you can always open this particular place by right clicking, and you click on inspect. Then you click on this item, which is the inspector, and then you can just position your item on this. So by positioning this item on this particular one, you're seeing is showing us a relative at the top there. By positioning this our cursor on this item, you're seeing we have absolute. Unfortunately, we cannot really see like the distance that I was expecting to show you, but I mean it's all good. I strongly believe I've explained this in a way you should understand. But if you have more questions, please go ahead and drop your questions. So what I was just trying to show you is a scenario where this absolute item would maybe serve like a button, like a button on this particular layout, right? So it will serve like a button. So let's say I use 20 by 20. Oh, sorry, that was different. I was expecting to put this the width. So let's say 30. 30. So now this is what we have. I'm going to take off this text first. Okay, so now if you want to position this, so watch this very well now. I'm going to say 0 for the top. Now this is what happens. You see this is 0, right? Now if I say the left is 0, this is also what happens. 0, right? So 0, 0. Everything moves down to this location, which is the start, of course, because now left is 0, right is 0, which means of course we are not expecting any space at the top or at the bottom. Assuming this item was not inside this relative container, what you would expect is that this particular item will start from here, which is the body, right? Just as I explained earlier. I don't know why I keep I'm still trying to stress this particular point because it's very important. It's confused. I've seen a situation where a lot of developers are confused, not knowing what's happening. But as you can see, removing it from this particular element, the body becomes the new parent, right, of this item. So let's go back and put it in here. Now that it's in here, you see that the relative container is the new parent. Okay, so remember I said top is 0, left is 0. Okay, what if we take off top and we'll say the bottom is 0? What are we expecting? By the time I refresh, you see now it comes down to the bottom. The bottom is 0, which means just drop down to the bottom. If I say the bottom is like 50 px, you see the bottom has a space now, so which means the distance from here down to this point is 50 pixels. I drop it out to 10, I refresh, you see. Now what if I want to bring it down to the extreme? Remember now we have left of 0, which is this. So does that mean if I put right of 0, it will move over to the other end? Let's try that. And yes, we're correct. So you see, right of 0, everything here goes off, right? So if I say right of 10 px, we have that space as well. And now we are having this floating button, right? Which means we can have items just move from top to this position without affecting this item. And what I mean is this: you can have a couple of relative text. As you can see, it does not affect the position of this item in any way, right? So you can have a lot of text, so you can also go ahead and just say border radius is 50%, just to visualize what I what I was showing you on that particular on our design here, right? So that is it. That is relative, that is absolute. Let's quickly let's quickly talk about sticky and fixed. So I'm going to take off so we can have enough space, right? I'm going to take off, and I hope everyone can see my screen. I'm going to take off what I have about the relative and absolute. Okay, so let's also take it off from here. Alright, now what is sticky and what is fixed? Okay, so the idea about something being sticky, I will just explain from a practical angle. Then maybe you can also check this out. This Mozilla developers network. Okay, so the moment you have something and you say it's sticky, now can you see what's happening? It's sticky because we can also change the position, using top and left. You can change the position, but the idea is even after changing the position, that item is from the top, from the distance you give this item from the top. So you see a lot of people using sticky when it comes to implementing navigation bars, right? So I made this 0. Now. See what happens. While I'm scrolling, it's moving. It's moving like every other item. But the moment it gets to 0, and this place you are seeing here is actually 0. So that's why you see that nothing enters this tiny space here. Just in case you can't see this well, let me zoom in. Okay. Actually, good. So I believe you can see this now. Now I use 0. This is still in its normal position, but once you scroll and you're going out of you are removing that particular, you are trying to remove that particular item from the context of the screen at that moment. So we're assuming that this is our entire screen. It gets to now the idea about fixed is fixed just holds one particular position. As you can see, it does not respect the boundary. It just holds itself on that particular position. Of course, when you set top and bottom and the other items, it respects. Sorry, let me grab a cup of water. Sorry. So it actually respects that the boundary when it comes to the top. It respects the positions, like top, left, and the rest of them. But the idea is it holds that particular position, and it does not respect your scrolling whatsoever. Okay, so I'm going to explain this, of course, on our own implementation here. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm going to give this. Of course, we already have a background of yellow, right? So let's go ahead and make this red. All right, so this is what happens here. So the moment I put maybe like the top of 50 px and left of 50 px. Okay, so now this actually accepted that top left. What we are seeing here is when it comes to that top position, that top position was not implemented, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to put like more items on this screen so we can make this screen scrollable, right? I'm just going to put more item. Of course, we can implement that by just setting some kind of height, on the body. I believe we can set maybe like 200. Doesn't make much sense, but there's no need to do that. But let's just go ahead and put in. So let's put in some H1, right? We can have enough space. So this is hidden. Okay, so let's see what we have now. Alright, so this is almost coming scrollable. Okay, so I think this is fine. So you see what's happening here. This item is fixed, right? And as you can see, it's just fixed on that particular position. It's not even scrolling at all. Now for the sticky item, it is scrolling, but the moment it gets to it gets to a position where it's trying to you are trying to make it exceed or to scroll into to scroll out of the screen. It does not scroll out. It just holds that particular position. Now initially when we implemented this, we discovered that the top was not implemented at that moment, and that is because we did not have enough item to push it down to this particular position that it is right now. Now the moment you are trying to scroll out of the boundary, you see that the top implementation is working at this moment, right? You see that we have top of 50px, and now you can see top of 50px, right? So even if you make this like 100px, of course that will be implemented when you are trying to leave. So now it cannot scroll past this because this is the boundary you set from this position down to this position, 100px. So even if I add more, headings, maybe just like this. Yeah, so even if I add more headings, you see that these guys are scrollable, but because of the boundary, from our top, because of this spacing, it does not really exceed this specific position, this particular position, right? And that's caused by the 100px we have here. What if we make it 0? Now you see it's able to get to the extreme parent. I would call it the parent because that's the body, of course. That's the parent. Now look at fixed. Fixed has its own implementation, and the idea is it is just on that particular. It's just in that particular location. It doesn't move away from there. But now the question is, can we use fixed and at the same time apply top and left? Is that possible? Yes, that is possible. So why did this item just automatically jump to the top here? I mean, what is the logic behind that? What is happening here? Now, whenever you're using fixed or sticky or absolute or relative, you can see that these items work top, left, bottom, right. The only time that they don't work is when your item is static. So for now it is working, and by setting top, it automatically moves to the top here, which is of course 0px. And remember that this is the boundary, so this is 0px. Every other item is scrollable, but it does not leave that particular location because it is fixed. So even if we make this so let's assume we say we have a width of 100% and the height of 50px. So now what we're going to get is more like this this idea of the navigation bar. We have left, so let's take off left so that we won't have this space right here. And by default the body of the page has some sort of spacing. Still margin of 0 and starting to 0. sorry. Alright, so as you can see now, this is more like what we want, right? So we are trying to implement like a navigation. We're already working on something similar, as you can see. The question is, this guy is getting to this point because remember that sticky is 0. Once it gets here, it actually enters inside, but once it gets to this particular position, it does not move past that boundary. So what if we don't want sticky to get to this position? What can we do? We can make it stop somewhere around here by just making it like top of 50px, because the height is 50px. Okay, that's great. So this is what we get, right? It just gets to this position and it stops moving. Okay, so we can also, maybe I've seen some websites that look like this. Okay, so you have a specific item, scrolling. Once it gets here, you see what just happened. So if you have any question, you don't understand what I did here, can ask this is pretty straightforward. Yes, actually already having something great, you know, from what we've implemented so far. But we've spent enough time on this, and I think we've actually reached the end of you know, talking about positions. Please make sure you go through this link, and there are so many ways to implement this. When you're working on your designs, remember that the point of you implementing items or your designs with CSS would always be as a result of what you get as a design requirement, right? So of course we're not trying to, you know, implement anything here, but in a real world scenario, a designer would give you like some sort of file, you know, design file. You have to follow the pattern on the file to make sure you achieve, you know, exactly the same thing that you see there. All right, so I would want us to quickly implement this, you know, and okay, like, so I would want us to quickly implement this. So once we are done with you know, implementing this, we'll move on to talk about a grid, and of course we have to be fast because time is already against us. All right, so let's go ahead and implement this using what we've learned so far with you know, relative, absolute. I don't see any use case for fixed or sticky, but of course we've learned how to use fixed and sticky for simple. I think maybe what I should do is always send, instead of deleting some of these items. Oh, okay. I've deleted some already, but I'm going to send what I have here right now while I proceed to talk up to implement the new. So let me quickly wrap this up. I'm going to call it okay, yeah, I think the name is fine, FE. So I'm going to zip this and you know, drop it on the group right now while I proceed. All right.
I think there should be a continuous somewhere.
Okay, so let's proceed with you know, implementing this simple design. All right, so I'm going to take this off, and the reason why I'm starting from scratch is so you will see what we can come up with. So for the section, I actually want our design to just be in the center of the page, right? And I'm going to teach you how to use grid. I'm going to use grid to make this item appear in the center. So let's just call it center, or maybe we can just go ahead and you know, use the section itself instead of implementing like custom. Yeah, so let's just call this section. So I'm going to say display. Let's call this grid. Place items, right? Place items. Place items center. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to make the width 100%, the height 100%. Okay, so let's go ahead and take off sticky and fixed. For now, let's just say background. Okay, so I want this particular item. I want the body to be the parent, right? I want the body to be the parent of this particular file. So I think I just took everything off. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and just set background color. So I would really love to take like, you know, this exact color we have here. Unfortunately, I don't think. Okay, so I'm going to pick this exact color so you can just like, you know, try to emulate what we have here, right? So if I should select this item, you see the color here. You can just drop this. Of course, this is an hexadecimal color, so hexadecimal colors you have to put in this symbol, the hash symbol. Okay, so we have the background, right? And now that we have the background, let's go ahead and see if our section is currently in the center. Of course, our section is not in the center because body is not having. There are so many ways to do this. I personally love to use grid because it's simple, it's fast. You know, you just have to place items. Center. And now we can set like the width and height of this section. So let's go ahead and do a width of 200 px, right? Okay, now we can take this off and let's just test. Oh yeah, we need to make it visible. So background. So let's go ahead and pick this particular color. Okay, so I'm still going to pick the color using this. Now the reason is because this particular item is a component. I don't want to double click on this, else it will take me somewhere else. You can't see my screen. Please, can others see my screen?
You can ever pay using your debit card.
Can you guys?
Please don't use Visa card. Forget that.
My screen is frozen.
Visa card. If you use Visa card, they're going to frustrate you.
Oh my goodness.
Because Nigerian banks are useless. I said don't use Visa card. Like Nigerian banks have made Visa card useless, so it won't even work on Facebook. Okay, then you can, if you're going to use this card, just use a MasterCard. Then this Naira payment with MasterCard or PayU, it's like you using a payment portfolio and payment gateway like Flutterwave. So that is what this Master of Visa card is. But for now, just use debit card. Or which one would you prefer? Will you prefer to fund the account before you run the ad? Would you prefer to fund the account before you run the ad?
Okay, sorry about that. I think it's actually the problem is actually from my end. But can you see my screen now, please?
I'm coming.
Okay. So as you can see, I mean, everybody has everybody's having these network issues. I'm currently using 3 different networks at the same time just to avoid this whole confusion about network. So what I think we are going to be doing going forward is probably recording some of these videos and sharing with you. I think that will be a very good approach to avoid having these issues all the time and having to delay our classes. Okay, but now that you can see my screen, let me just proceed. Sorry for those that glitchy audio. Okay, so can you see my screen now? Can I proceed? Just drop a comment, please. Drop a comment and let me know if there's any way I can help you. Because I'm about to proceed. Okay, thank you. All right. So for the background color, I'm just going to set the color we have on our design, which is this color 1E, 1E, 1E. So I'm going to apply this color, and let's go ahead and see what we have. All right. So this is what we have. It's not directly in the center of our page. Of course, what we have to do to fix this, I think I would better go with DH. Yeah. Okay, so we have this in the center of our screen. I'm going to explain those things. I'm definitely going to explain those things. Let's just try to stick to the height and width. And what we can see here is the width is 168 pixels and the height is 190 pixels. So let's be let's make sure 168 pixels and 190 pixels. Okay, so let's refresh this page and now we have the container, right? So we also see that we have a border radius. So this is just me trying to explore this specific design. I'm just going to use like 10px for the border radius because I'm not trying to spend too much time getting the exact spec. So let's just do the border radius for 10px. And then we can go ahead and implement the items we need to implement in here. Let me zoom in so you can see this very clearly. So we have like the conversation, we have this, you can implement these 3 items using just the p tag. But it's a good idea to make sure you have like clear understanding of what should be what should look like a heading, or maybe what should look like a paragraph. But there's no problem when you decide to use like paragraph to implement everything here. You just have to make sure you use your classes and yeah, you really know how to implement this using your classes. So let's go ahead and implement this 3 items. Now we have like P, we have the paragraphs, we have 3 paragraphs. Conversation, so I'm just going to put that in conversation. Conversation. That's good. Or is that conversion? Oh, that's conversion, sorry. So we have 537. And finally, we have, I'm just going to copy this text. Okay, so we have these 3 items, and what we're going to do, yeah, I think others can hear me clearly. Okay, so what we're going to do is to have, this class, maybe we can say, so I'm just going to call this conversion. I'm going to call this value, and I'm going to call this description. So let's just call it title, value, and description, right? So I'm going to copy this class. I'm going to call this title. Description. Okay, so now we have this implemented title, the value, and the description. Alright, so now that we have these values, let's go ahead and set more like the colors, right? So you can actually set the general color of the P. You can set the general color of P tag to carry this specific color, but you can also decide to set them individually. Maybe you have like a little bit of adjustment, so you can just do that by setting color. For now, let's not waste too much time, so I'm just going to use white. So remember what I said. You can actually use like a single property to set everything to white, which means the moment I set P to white, it's actually going to affect everything here. But the reason why I'm setting it this way is maybe you might decide to change it. You might decide to use yellow. I mean, you have your own preference, right? So now let's talk about the font size. So I'm just going to set like the font size of this item, and I'm going to use like 10 px here. Here I'm going to use like maybe 25 px, and for the last one, maybe I would go ahead and use like 13 px, right? So let's go ahead and refresh this page to see what we have. So none of these. So I think let's see the class. This is title. Okay, let's save that file. Yes, I did. Okay, so let's see where the problem is coming from. Okay, so we have for the P, yeah, where is the mistake coming from? Description. Okay, that's kind of weird. Okay, let's see. Split view. Okay. Okay, so still trying to figure out. Okay, why can't I figure this out? Oh, okay. Okay, so the color was already affected. I'm wondering why that took a while. Okay, so I'm wondering why that took a while. But anyways, let's quickly continue. We're going to set a default font family. I'm just going to use Poppins. You might not have Poppins on your system. I'm just going to use Poppins. They have a problem, we have to set like the padding. We have to set the padding of this item. So I'm just going to use a padding of 20. So everything I'm doing right now is just random. Of course, we're not trying to follow the design spec exactly. So I'm just going to set the padding of 20 px, so we can have that that space around, right? So now we have that space, and then look at this item. This item is not as big as we want it to be. So let's go ahead and try 45 and see what we. Oh, that's too big. Yeah, but I mean, even if we're using 45, we can now go ahead and remove the margin. Just use a default of 0, and this is what we get. Okay, so now that we have this, I still think it's a little bit too big. So let's just reduce some of these items. This is 12. Okay, so now that we have this item, the final thing we need to position here is our image. So I'm going to export this. I'm going to make it. I'm going to export it as a PNG file. Graph. I think that's a good name. Straight to the desktop, so I can easily move it to the right location. So now we have a graph on the desktop. I'm just going to move it into assets, and I'm going to create a new folder called images, right? So take off this file and paste it in here. So let's go to the desktop. Let's copy graph. come back here and drop our graph here. So now from our design, we can just come down here and have let's expand this. Okay, so now we can have img, src, assets, right, images, and graph, png. So you can decide to style from here, but I'm going to style using css this time. So let's just paste. So by default, this is what we have. Not really looking exactly like this, and that is because the quality of our export was actually low. That's what you see is kind of blur. So when you are exporting maybe from a design spec, it's good to at least have a good, I mean, you can always go with SVG. SVG is a very good option, because SVG will not drop the quality of that particular item. So maybe we should give SVG a try. Let's go ahead and try SVG. So now I'm going to come back to the desktop. I'm going to pick graph.svg. So SVG is an image type, right? In case you don't know, it's also one of the image types we have. SVG, JPG, PNG. It's all they work on your browser as well. So let's go ahead and use SVG, and let's see what the new quality looks like. So you see, it's very clear, and all we can do now is to probably just call this image here and just put like a width of maybe, I don't know, maybe like 100%. Let's see what we get if we use 100%. So now you see it's filled this item, but there's a problem. The bottom, we don't want to we don't want to put extra height for this card. So maybe what we can just do is adjust this guy. But let's go ahead and test why we are implementing this first, which is the relative and the absolute item. So imagine if we make this item relative, which is a position of relative. So by default, of course, this is what we have. So what if we say we add maybe like left or 50px? What happens? So you see, we're able to move this card, right? We're able to move this card around. We have 50px, we have like 100px at this point. We're able to move this card. We have like as a matter of fact, I mean, you can even have -50 and -100. So you see, so -100 is basically just almost using, I think, yeah, using right, I guess. So you see, we're able to move this item around. If we say 0, comes back here, and the reason is because of our display type already. So let's go ahead and just let's try top, and let's assume we use 50px. So you see, it's able to move around. It's 50. So you see what's happening here, and that is for the position of relative. So let's go ahead and test the absolute, right? So we already have relative selected here. Let's go down to the image and let's just say position of absolute. So now that we have the absolute position here, see what happens. I mean, this guy automatically begins to it's trying to step out of the boundary, of course, because of this single position, and of course because of the fact that we gave it a width of 100%. Taking of that width makes it come back to normal. But the thing about this is, if we say top of 0 and maybe left of 0, this is what we get now. And as you can see, it has taken this item as the new parent, so 0 0, right? So now we can move this item around. So if we decide to say bottom of 0, it goes straight down to the bottom, that exact line. So as you can see, the exact line, I don't think I can so as you can see, the exact line, and if I say, okay, maybe we'll have 10px for example, and yeah, we don't want to even deal with the left at this moment, but at the same time we actually need the width, but maybe 100% is kind of too much. So let's go ahead and use pixels, and let's leave it at the width of this item is 160 something, so probably let's leave it at 150. So this is what we have. So yeah, I think that is actually too much. So because of our padding, of course, so let's just leave it at 150 or maybe 160. So you can adjust this, of course, but the idea right now is that we're using absolute to make sure we position this thing properly. Now, one thing you will notice here is, if I should come down to target and maybe I continue to say 22% of our target audience, and mix it up with the requirement as expected. Alright, so what you see here is by the time I refresh, you see what is happening. We use absolute. Now this guy is no longer pushing this down. This moment we're no longer having that the default static nature of this item where everything is layered, but instead the absolute guy just remains here, and because we have used the position to bound it around the parent, right? And this other stuff we're typing can just keep moving and expanding. So of course that is how you work with relative and absolute. So imagine when I discussed about us having the fab, which is the floating action button. Imagine we are trying to implement the floating action button here. Now let's quickly do this so I can talk about grids, right? So I'm going to be a little bit fast, and I'm going to say button class. I'm going to call this FAB, which is floating action button, and we're going to close this button. So we're going to just say we have a text like maybe plus. Sorry. So by default, this is what our button looks like, right? And this button is outside the section. So let's move it into this section, and we're going to make it absolute as well, right? So we just have the button, we have the position of the absolute. So now this item is right inside this guy. But another thing we need to do is to say we have a bottom of maybe like 10 px. So now watch what happens. So this is what we have, right? You see it's also floating on this like on the whole item right now, and then we're going to put let's use a right of 10 px as well. So sorry, I think that should have been oh yeah, that's the wrong item. That's the wrong item, so it has to be on our button, and then we have it at this position. What we can also do is to just take off the border radius. So just say border none. Then before we say the border radius can be 50%, right? So we can have that kind of circular feel. Then we can have like the height of 50 px or the width of 50 px. Yeah, and now we have something like this. So of course this is how to implement this kind of items. Simple, and if you have any issues, of course drop your questions, and then I think we can proceed already. Alright, so this is it for relative, absolute, and all that. We've messed our design up already, but I think it's great. At least you understand the idea of working with this kind of working with positions, right? So you understand the idea of working with positions. So we have a button floating around here. It can be an avatar. So you've seen we're definitely going to do a lot of designs, like trying to convert designs to code, probably working on cards with images and all that. We're going to do all those stuff. So let's quickly wrap up here. I'm going to also compress this right now. So let me go from here, the desktop. So I'm going to compress this, and I'm going to call it relative, absolute, practical, and I'm going to also drop it here for you. Okay, on the Discord chat. Alright, so at this point I want us to talk a little bit about components. I think we still have a little bit of time, so let's talk about components. I'm going to become a little bit faster at this moment. We're going to talk about components, and I'm not going to go in depth, but I want you to understand that the idea of components is not necessarily a big. I won't say it's a big deal, but just take a look at this. So this is a website. It's called the Sketch Resources, Sketch App Resource. Sketch App Sources. Okay, so there are lots of templates, especially for designers, not really for developers. But you can go out there, you can check out Dribble and some other sites. I'm just going to search for button, or maybe I like button. So as you can see, we have different types of button. Now these are called components, or as a front-end guy, you might call them. You definitely call them components or elements. When you are coding, you might refer to them as elements, but when you start working with frameworks, they are also called components. So for example, as you can see, we have different patterns of buttons, right? We have this button. I think I like this. This is simple. So we have this button, this Apple button, and you're seeing they have like two items, on the same line. You might be saying maybe we can use a span to position these items. But sometimes the best option to go with is maybe a grid or even a flex. So we're going to talk about implementing these components, but I'm going to first explain what a grid is. So you have seen a lot of designs even on websites like Jumia and the rest of them, and definitely they all use grids, to arrange their product categories. Whether it's a product catalog or maybe it's it's a given set of items, that is just meant to display more like with rows and columns. So they tend to arrange some of those items using CSS Grid. So let's talk about CSS Grid. So I'm going to first drop a link here for you. CSS Grid, Mozilla. Yeah, let's just say Mozilla. Show to take us down there. Okay, good. All right. So straight to charts, you have CSS Grid. Now, CSS Grid is actually a way to wrap up items, or like a collection of items, into what we call grids, right? And of course, you know what a grid is. But you don't know what a grid is. A grid is just a way to organize items, from left, like row and column. I'm going to show you an example. Then I will explain. I think it's always good to kickstart. Okay, yeah. So we have an example on this page. You can check it out, and as you can see, we have some items. Of course, this is kind of scattered because they are trying to use it to explain a couple of things here. But the idea is using the rows or using the columns. I think these are kind of like the major ones you'll be using. It has a lot of properties, as you can see. A whole lot of properties, and I'm sure there are more. I don't think there's everything. I'm sure there are more. Grid lines, grid cell, grid area, curtains. So definitely there are lots of properties. I'm going to implement a very simple grid. So we're going to have like a box, right? We're going to have a box. I'm going to call this a div, and then like a class of a box container. So this is going to be like a container to hold the boxes, right? So let's go ahead and implement a box container. So we have like a display of grid. So a grid is a display type, and we basically have two primary ones that you'll be using most of the time, grid and flex, but let's focus on grid for now. So we have like a display of grid, and automatically this will tell the box container that every item that comes inside your body, I want you to arrange them as a grid. So I'm not going to write too much code again here. We're just going to go in here to style the box itself, right? So let's start the box. So we have three boxes. So I'm just going to call like a background color, background of maybe, let's go with yellow again. Huh? Then let's put the width of 200 and the height of 200 here. Alright, so let's save this and let's refresh our page. Okay, so we actually have three grids here, but to you might be seeing just one item. And the reason why you are seeing it this way is because these grid items are actually stacked. They are stacked under each other. So in order for us to really verify if we have three items there, I'm going to add a border, and I'm going to say 2px black, 2px, 1px solid, right? I don't know, black. Is that valid? Okay, yeah, that's valid. Okay, so now you see we have these items, and we decided to add like the border around it. So this is how you would know that we have three items here, but by default it is stacked like from top to bottom, which means it's using the so let's see if I can fix this. By default it's stacked more like a row. This is row 1, row 2, row 3. I won't tag this as a column right now, so all we have to do, we have to go back to the container. But before I do that, let me first explain from the HTML perspective, right? So we have like this item, which is more like the parent, right? And we have the children. So this is the parent and this is the children. Is this problem just from your end? I think it's just from your end, Jukes, because probably you should disconnect and join again. Okay, so we have the parents and we also have the children. Now the parent here is the box container and the children are the boxes. Okay, so what I'm going to do here right now is I'm going to determine like the rules for presenting representing these boxes for the parent. So let's say we decide to add something called a gap, and we say we have a gap of 20px, and refresh this. So you see automatically we have that gap, right? And the gaps are actually meant to be like, in two different patterns. So you can have like a row gap and a column gap. Now I'm just using the gap itself because we have not, we have not displayed anything in columns, right? Let's go ahead and display something in column. So I can go ahead and say grid template column, and then I can say one fraction, one fraction, one fraction. So I'm going to explain why I did this. Just hold on, don't be confused yet. Okay, so the reason why I'm doing this is because I actually know the amount of items I need in here, right? I can go ahead and say I need one fraction, two fraction, and then I limit the amount of items here. Now, by looking at this code, from the HTML and CSS angle, this should tell you that, okay, we have two children. Now, in terms of arranging these items as columns, we want the first child to take up one fraction. We want the second child to take up two fractions. Now, what that means, looking at this from a design angle, I think I should explain with this so you can understand it better. So what that means, looking at it from a design angle, is we have an item like this, and we are saying this our page. We want this page, since we have given this entire page, we have converted this page to a grid, for example. We want the children of this page to be just two items, which is 1 and 2, right? But we want one item to take up one fraction and the second item to take up two fractions. Now, first off, how do you measure these items in fractions? So let's just do a very simple measurement. So let's assume this item right now has two fractions, right? Two equal fractions. This is just an assumption. So let's say we have two equal fractions, but we are saying the first item should take up one fraction and the second one should take up two fractions. Automatically, what is going to happen is this item is going to be divided this way, and then we're going to assume that, okay, by default we have three fractions like this. This is just an assumption. So by default we have three fractions, but one side need to take up one fraction, and one side need to take up two fractions. So this is going to be two fractions from one side, right? And this is going to be one fraction. So this is one fraction, two fraction. Now you can also do this using a percentage or pixels. For me, I prefer to use other fractions or percentage. I will also show you how to achieve this with a percentage. Let's see what we have on our browser when I refresh. So this is what is happening. This item is actually taking up two fractions, but the problem here is we actually have a fixed box. Now, as you can see, we have a fixed size, for the box, 200 by 200, which means definitely you don't expect this box to exceed its size, right? But looking at it, this box also owns this space. The only problem is it cannot really visualize it because of the limit we've set on the pixel. Now, what if we go ahead to say, okay, take up 100% of whatever area you have. Now, for this item that has one fraction, it's going to take up 100% of its space. For this item that has two fractions, it will take up 100% of the space. Let's see what we have. Oh, so this is absolutely different. And now I'm going to ask myself, what and why do we have this? Okay, so looking at this, looking at what we have, I'm giving like an assumption. Why do we have this? Why do we have this? Okay, let's go ahead and inspect, and try to figure out what the problem is exactly. Okay, so now we have this item as the. Oh, okay. So I think I get it. Okay, so I think the problem we're having right now is basically our box container does not even have like a specific width. So our box container does not have a specific width to say, okay, this is the entire boundary. And the reason why these items were taking up this space, like the initial space we saw, is because it had like a fixed width all by itself. So now telling this item to take up 100%, meanwhile its parent does not even have up to 100%, does not make any sense. And I think that's why we have this. So let's go ahead and try a fix to see if we will be able to resolve the problem we have right now. All I'm going to do is I'm going to add a width, okay, 100%, or maybe you can even make it a pixel. So you see what we have. We've been able to resolve this. So you need to understand that definitely as a developer you're going to be creating a lot of bugs, having a lot of buggy code because problems arriving from one place to another. Now, what you need to always tell yourself is, how do I debug? How do I fix this? So we encountered a problem, and initially we had 200 pixel. 200 pixel means this is going to create this this size no matter what, right? And it's created this size. But the moment we are asking it now, take up 100% of your space, because now the measurement has changed, right? And all of a sudden, it does not even know. It actually did its job, by taking up 100%. Unfortunately, the space of the parent is not bigger than this. This is just the space. And the reason why we have this space that you're seeing here is basically because of the gap. So if we take up the gap, here's what we have. So which means the parent does not even have enough space, to assign 100% to the children. Of course, you did assign the 100%. It took up 100%, but you are confused. What's happening here? So what happened to the rest of this space? That is because of the parent, and at this point, the problem is not from the children. So all I have to do, let's assume I take off the gap first, and give this guy a weight of 100%. So now we have 100%, and then there's no gap. So automatically this filled this particular space, right? Now this is the power of grid. You're already implementing beautiful layout. You might be asking yourself, why am I calling this a beautiful layout? There's nothing interesting about this. Now I'm going to show you something. So let's assume we have box 1 and box 2, right? We have box 1 and we have box 2. So let's say this is blue, right? I'm going to take off the border. Personally, don't think we need it at this point. So yeah, I can even maybe keep this as that white and keep this as black. So now this is the layout that we have using grid. So we're able to assign one fraction of this entire page to the item by the side, which is the box by the left, and then we assign them 2 fractions to the item by the right. So another way to achieve this without using fraction, as I said earlier, is percentage. So if you want to use percentage, you're going to assume that everything we have here is 100% by default, right? So everything we have here is 100%, and now by setting 100%, you see that the first item took 100, the second item took another 100. So what if we decide to split these boxes based on percentage? All I have to do at this point, if I do 50% and 50%, this is what we get, right? One problem we have is this item is not taking up the entire height. And why is that? So we're having that because we already set a fixed height. What if we do 100% as well? What happens if we do 100%? Now let's verify. Of course, okay. Now everything just goes off, and I'm sure the reason is because we're doing the height as percentage instead of VH. So VH actually means this we're taking up the entire view height, and sometimes you might want to do VW, which means view width. Yeah, but I love to use the percentage for the width most times, and when it comes to the height, I love to use VH. But I'm very sure that if we set the box container and we give the box container 100%, let's verify this, and then we come back here, and yeah, let's save that. So by default, you see, by default it has taken up that height by default, and because we gave the height to the parents. So what the parents own is being inherited by the children, which is box 1 and box 2. Now we have a layout where we divide this page into 2 equal parts, which is 50-50%. That's what you see here from the grid template column, right? Now, what if we change this to rows? What happened? So by changing this to row, it automatically converts into a row. So you have a question. So since we're manipulating the width using the grid template column, does that mean that the width of the individual containers doesn't matter anymore? So no, just so take a look at this now. So when we say, so of course, since we're manipulating this using this 50-50%, the reason why I set this to 100%, if you go ahead and set this to PX, definitely this is going to, you're going to see like 100 px. The only difference is the grid template rows or grid template column actually creates that space for you, but you as the child have to fill in that page, right? So let me explain this with a simple design now. So we have, I would also go back to that design, but let's just do this. So now we have two, we have like, like 50% each, right? Okay, good. Now the grid template column generated the 50% for you, but you as the child, now this item is the child. This particular item is the child. So of course the grid template column has given you 50%. Now you have to decide either to use up that 50% or just take maybe like a fraction, right? You just want a fraction, you just want like 100 px. So let's go ahead and refresh this page and see what we have. So you see, this is what happens when I changed this to 100 px. So I don't know if you understand what I just explained. Sorry if I pronounce it wrongly. So what happens here right now is the container, the box container, right, with the help of the grid, has given you 50%. Now it is your job as the child to accept the 50% or not. So yes, you have a 50% possession, but this is what I want for now, 100 px, and now we have a whole lot of space that is unused. But the moment you take up the full 100%, now 100% of the child is going to stay within its container. This is its container, this is its space. 50% is your space, right? And this is your 50%, which means 100% of you cannot exceed this particular boundary, because to the child, this is my space, and my space is 100% to me. But to the parent, what the parent can see that it has assigned to you is 50%. So try to understand. I don't want to bring in a lot of percentage this. I don't want to make it look like mathematics, but now this is the entire page. Using grid template column, we have divided this page into two, giving this guy 50, giving this part 50% and this other part 50%. Now the 50% is only known by the parent. To the child, what he or she, if I say he or she, sorry for that, what the child is consuming is 100%, right? So it's left for the child to determine how to use this. Now on our code, if I say 50%, now 50% of this particular item you're seeing is going to take up like probably around here. So let's verify. So you see what we have now, it's taking up this angle. Do you understand? Now remember that we can also go to our grid template column and break this down into like 25, 25, and 50, which means if we have an extra item, and let's call this box 2 and box 3. So now we have box 1, we have box 2. Let's also give this guy 100%, so it can pick up, it can fill its entire space. Now we have a background color of maybe blue, and so we have another color of maybe red. So we have blue, red. I don't know. I hope these colors don't mean anything crazy. So let's just leave it as blue. Oh, okay. Green, white, green. What happened there? Okay, this should be box 3, right? Okay, great. So, this should be box 2. Green, white, green. Okay, good. So now we have green, white, green. Okay. For those of you that are not Nigerians here, this is the flag of Nigeria. So let's also let's assume we want to divide this page into like 3 equal parts. So what is the expectation? I mean, if we have 50%, that's going to give us like 2 equal parts. So I think we should probably have like 33.3%. And let's see what we have. So this is in the case of using percentage, and as you can see, it might not be like 100% accurate, but I think it's not bad, trying to get the exact measurement. So 33.33, thank you very much. So as you can see, we're able to divide this page into 3 parts, and now we can start putting in the content we want to put in here. So imagine we want to add in like some content to this to the box 2, right? So let's assume we have some image. I don't have any image here, but I'm going to just get a quick image, and I'm going to say Nigerian coat of arm. I hope this is not a bad idea. Okay. I don't know. So what I'm going to do first of this, I'm going to quickly go ahead and yeah, I'm going to go ahead and check this. Okay. Then I'm just quickly going to get like use a simple image. So now we are working in box 2, remember, and yeah, most of our, so we're just going to put like the ALT, and I'm going to call this top scale logo. Then in here, I'm going to get a picture. So let's quickly come down to desktop, FE, assets, images. So I'm going to go down to my picture, top scale, top universe. Come back here and paste this, and I'm going to call this logo. So let's come back here and just put in assets, images, right, and logo.png. Okay, so if I come back to the browser and I refresh, so now of course the image is extremely large, right? So I have to adjust. So we can style the image. Remember, you can put in your own custom class. So I'm just going to put like a height of maybe 300 pixels. So now this is what we have. That is still too big. Let's make it 100 pixels, and this is what we have, right? So this is you know, like inside the second item. Yeah, so now we're using percentage here. Is percentage the best option here? I mean, it's fine, but we can also just make it 1FR, 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 which means each part should take equal fraction. Now, this is more you know, focused on dividing the pages you know, as fractional points. So now we are very sure that every single part is equal. So we're able to put this in center. Now, using the same concept of grid, remember what the gap is doing for us, right? The gap is meant to add this kind of space. We don't need the space, that's why we're using the gap. But just for you to know, we have what we call the column gap. The column gap is actually what creates like this gap between the items. So this is column gap by default. Now, row gap is when you have like a gap at the bottom. So maybe you have like 1, 2, 3, then you have like 4, 5, 6. So we're going to test that. We're going to test the row gap as well. Row gap. So we're going to test that, not now, but we're going to test them. So we have these 3 items. We have this image. Let's just go ahead and you know, show you that using the box 2, you can also display the box 2 as a grid, thereby making it a parent of another item. Because as you can see, the box 2 currently has a child, right? It becomes a parent. So this is the parent of box 2, and this is box 2 becomes the parent of the image. So now we have this guy. I can just say place items. I think, yeah, place items center, and we should have this item placed in the center, just like this. Okay, good. So this is just like a quick introduction to grid. We're going to do something more reasonable right now, you know, something more reasonable, but you know, just for yeah, let me also show you what you can, you know, achieve by using this kind of implementation, right? So let's assume that we also decide to add, you know, a couple of images here, but this time not just we're not going to use exactly the same image. I'm just pasting it in here. We're going to replace those images. Yeah, so at this point we have like this as the default image. It's not so good. I'm going to use a custom item called logo. So logo should you know, be like the class of this particular image, and then for the rest we're going to use a different image. And what we are going to do is to say box3 dot img. So box3 img. I'm going to explain why I did this, because I'm sure you've not seen me like have, you can actually have like, you know, complex classes, you know, clustered together, and I'm going to explain why. Now, the moment you have a class, for example, box1, and then you have a child, right? And maybe in this child you say image1, right? So you call this image1. Now, you can actually say box1, sorry, this is box2, change those. So you can actually say box1 image. Now what happens is it's going to look for the image right under box1 as a parent. So which means if there is no image under box1 as a parent, this is invalid. But any image that comes under box1 would carry this class type. Do you understand? Now, this image is not going to affect this image or this image, but it's going to only affect the image inside box 1. That's what you're seeing here. That's how this works. So, which means you can use this as a chain to next a lot of children, right? So, let's say you have another div called hello, you have another div called world, you have another div, you can actually have nexted classes, but remember that the nexted classes is based on the parent. So if the parent is valid, then it will look for the child. You understand? If that child is valid, to look for the next, just like that. So it's going to be more like a chain of classes, right? So that is a way to implement some of these things. So now that we have this image 1, we're going to definitely have image 1 here. Then at the end, we're going to have image 3. We don't have those images yet, so I'm going to quickly go get them. And I want to show you how you can use, how you can fill containers with the image. So we can just say maybe like the height should be 100%, the width should be 100%. And yes, you might be asking yourself, what are we expecting? So let's go ahead and get a wallpaper. So I have images describing the universe. So let me copy these 2. Well, let's quickly go. Yeah, so let's take like 1 and 2, like random images. So I think these 2 will be good. So let's come back here. Let's paste them. I'm going to call this image 1. Change it to PNG. You can use JPG. It doesn't matter. Just like being consistent, right? So PNG. So let's say image 1 PNG, image 3. So that should be image 3, right? Awesome. All right, so let's save this. Let's just refresh. Okay, so of course the images are too big, way too big. Okay, so the images are actually way too big. Let's yeah, I think if we go ahead and try to implement some let me start by adjusting this, and let's see what is going on here. Then we can try to set the thing about the boundary. I think this is wrong. This is box 1 image, so we also need box 3 image, right? So let's set this is box 3 image. Let's just go ahead and refresh. Okay, so now we have those 2 images. So I'm going to now use the percentage and also the percentage here. All right, so this is what we have. So as you can see, we have these 2 images, feeling like the first container and the second container. How can we make this even better? We can add something called object fits. Yeah, object fit to cover. So object fit is going to remove this kind of stretchy, appearance. We only added this in box 3, which is the image 3. So you see now we have like a better, properly placed image. So we can also put this in the other item, right? And this is also great. All right, so we have these items. We have this box 2 with the background color of white. I think I would prefer to have like black. Okay, so this is not bad. We have a very good layout here. Let's go ahead and come up with something that is that has more meaningful use case. Of course, we are learning how to work with basic components, and also putting these components on beautiful layouts, like using the grid and also using positions. We still have a lot of components to learn how to implement, like buttons, like nice cards. We are going to work on a very simple card right now, and we are going to implement that card as a grid. We have to be very fast. So let me go ahead and send you what we've done here, which is a basic grid. I think I'll call that basic grid, right? So let's see. I'm going to copy and paste basic grid. Delete this and compress. Okay, so I'm going to drop this in here and send. All right, so now we have we're done with the basic grid. So let's go ahead and take this off. Also take what we have here off. So let's go ahead and start now. So I'm going to create a new item I call the class. I'm going to call it grid container. So you don't necessarily have to be overwhelmed about the fact we're doing a lot of things right now. I mean, this is how we learn. I don't expect you to absorb everything at this moment. But by the time you go back to watch this stream, you will learn a lot of things, and you will figure out why some things became the way they are on this call. So just to watch closely and try to be focused. Okay. So we have another div which is child now, and we can call this the card, right? So let's call it the card container, or maybe the card wrapper. I mean, it depends on you. So I'm just going to leave it as container. Some people might love to use underscore, still valid. Okay. So card container, let's go ahead and drop the card container. I'm going to do a display of grid. I'm going to say grid template columns. We're going to have one FR, one FR, one FR. Now I'm still using the fraction. I want to show you something else, but I'm still using the fraction. We have a gap of 20px, just simple column gap, right? But I want to make this like a column gap and a row gap. And of course, having the 2 is equivalent to just putting in gap, right? So this 2 is equivalent to just putting in gap of 20px. Having this 2 is equivalent to this, but for now, let me just show you. So now that we have this, we're going to design our card, and we're going to say the card has like a width of 250px, not windows but width. So let's fix that. So width, okay. So then we're going to put like border radius of maybe like 20px. Okay, so then color, background color of like yeah. So I want it to be white, but maybe like white smoke is okay. So let's go ahead and see what we have. We just have one card. Let's make it 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's make it 6 cards, right? So let's refresh this page. So you can't see this properly, but I'm going to use 100% here. And for the body, let's set a background color of black. Okay. So as you can see, I mean, this should not look magical to you. So what we did, let me explain. So what we did is we created, of course, we have the body with background color black, which is the body you're seeing here. Then we have a card container, and we use the display of grid template column 1FR, 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 which means give us 3 fractions. Now we have 3 fractions, but remember that the 3 fractions is meant for 3 items, just like this. Now that we have 3 items, we want more items. So the moment you add any extra item, it definitely goes down to the next line. So let's assume you add just 1 item. You can see what we have right now. So what you're seeing here for the row gap, if I take off the row gap, you're seeing the gap is gone. So this gap is gone. So look closely, the gap is back. So grid row gap is equivalent to row gap. So if I take it off, you see, so even if I use just row gap, you still have that gap, right? So adding more items gives us, now we have 6 items, and this is what we have. So I use 100%, and for the height you can also decide to use 100%. And let's see. No, that is very okay. Let's see if we have like the height here of 100 VH. Let's refresh, and then maybe inside the container here we have like a width of 100%, and then the height of 100%. What happens? All right, so it is back. Now it is back because initially we were setting a height when the parent does not have any height, so it does not know what to do when it comes to height. So I think it's always better to like try to fix your code this way. Know what you're adding in there. Now we have these cards. Well, the cards are not looking so bad. I just hit the border. I think it's kind of too big. So let's adjust this back to 100%. This is 100% of my screen. One thing you'll notice is we are so close to the edge, right? So why don't we use maybe like a section to fix this? I've taught you, about the section, and definitely you can use the section to organize, items on your page. It's almost 10. Oh my God, it's 10. Let's say we have the section here, and we decide to just say give us a complete width of like 80% of the entire page. 80% is there a mistake there? Section, give us a width of 80%. What went wrong exactly? So we have the card container. Okay, so I think now that we're beginning to use like a couple of percentage, I think we're beginning to like let me try something. So if we have a width of 80% and we have like margin 0 or 2, so we're using margin 0 or 2, you can actually position items in the center. But the problem with this is it's actually conflicting. So I want to figure out where we are having a problem at this point. So of course I can see we have the section. So by pointing at this item, you can see of course we have this section, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with our section. But by the time I go into the section, you see that our cards container is actually there, but it's very tiny. So which means something must be wrong with the. So let's go ahead and use VH, of course. So VH, as I said earlier, is view the view height. So right now we have that height, and I just wanted to put in this space, on the right and left. Also, given the section, we can add like after the margin 0 or 2, we can add like the margin top. I mean, if you want to, you can have like the 100 px and like the margin bottom 100 px. So it's just trying to position things, get that spacing around top and bottom. At this point, you can start adding maybe images and some text with absolute. You can add like the image with absolute and put it at a position maybe somewhere around here, and also the text. I know we are already out of time. I'm going to quickly add image and text and then share this with you so you can practice with it. So let's just take this off for now, and in here I'm going to put just one image, src avatar, the png, and then alt avatar. So there's nothing complex about this. If you have any question between now and tomorrow, you can go ahead and drop it. By the time you get hold of this code, so we have the image, and then we have a div that's going to carry class of description. Okay, then we have like the p class of name, and sorry, I'm almost done. Now we have another p, and we have a class of job title, right? So close this, so I can say software, and then front-end engineer, and then the name, we have like any random name. It's Elon Musk. Alright, good. So now we have Elon Musk in here. Okay, so this is filled up because of course our setting here. I'm going to change that. So of course we just have Elon Musk here, and this is our height. So let's make sure our height is maybe like 250 px, so we can have something stable, right? So now that we have this, what we're just going to do is to add our avatar, right? It's very straightforward stuff. So I'm just going to come down to pictures, wallpaper, open this simple image, and just grab the young man's face, go down to the desktop. We have avatar, copy this, back to our design, take this off, images. So now we have avatar, right? So let's just go in and say assets, images, and avatar.png. So we can refresh. Now we have the image, of course, very big. So our class avatar, and we have width of 200 px and the height of 200 px. So let's go in here and add the class equals avatar. Save. So of course still too big. 50. See. So that's avatar. Remember, for your card, add the padding, add 25 px maybe for the padding. So you see, we are beginning to play around with these stuffs, right? We're beginning to play around with these stuffs. Object feeds, cover. So these are as a front-end guy, these are we're just testing things, right? So we don't have any specific design pattern, and we can just say we have a border radius of 50%. As you can see, we automatically have that avatar looking good, looking awesome. Here we can have our font family, and we have like the poppins. I love poppins. You might not have poppins on your laptop, but I mean, this is a great card, right? Remember, this is the description, so which means you can go ahead and create the description. and will give it that position of absolute, and now that it's absolute, you can say bottom of 50px, and it automatically moves. So now it's moving itself down to the end somewhere around here, because we did not set this guy to be the relative, which is the card itself. So we can say position relative, and now by the time we refresh, it's back up here, as you can see. So I'm going to share this with you. I mean, you're really going to have a fun time looking through this. We have the class name and job title. So put in name and put in a job title, right? So you have this where you can just say font size, and you can say 30px. You can say font weight, and you can say bold, or maybe you can set numbers. But I'm going to leave this just the way it is. And then finally, we have this like 10 or maybe 12px. This is normal. So that's all. I think that should be all. Yeah, I think that should be all. So we've tried for today, and all I'm going to do is move this, send this over to you right now. Yeah, I mean before the team would query me. Okay. So thank you very much, and I'll send this over right now. So let's say margin 0 and padding 0, so we can have a lot of good space. So now that we have this card, and remember our parent is a container, we can just go ahead and paste this 6 times, and then we have this. Yeah, not looking so good because of our spacing, remember. So we can just go ahead and leave the gap 20px, and also work on our card width, right? So let's see what the problem here is coming from. Always remember to do your inspection. Yeah, we have a row gap, so this should be like gap, not just row gap. But well, oh boy. Okay, so I think I think we can debug this. Let's just inspect and figure out. Okay, so our cards are just like very close to each other. Trying to ask myself why is that? And I think maybe we can touch down on the okay. We can touch down on it. Well, I mean, that's not the best thing to do. That's basically not the best thing to do. You can definitely debug this and try to figure out where the problem is coming from. This is what I did right now, is just like a hack, but this is not the best thing to do. Anyways, that's all. I'm going to go ahead and just compile this stuff and share with you. And this is just going to be like a grid, so you can just play around with this, figure out where the bug is, fix it, and I hope you all are already submitting your assignments. So I think that should be all for now. So let's drop this compress and call this Elon Grid. All right. So thank you very much. We've spent additional 9 minutes. Apologies for taking up your time. I think that should be all for now. So if you have any question, go ahead and drop your question, and so I can see that there is a feedback form. There you can go ahead and fill this form. Yes, an assignment will be coming up tomorrow morning. Someone will drop an assignment for you guys tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for being part of the session, and have a wonderful night.